So my last video was an introduction to the concept here of this model railway that I plan to build. And in the last episode I said I was going to focus on this corner this corner right here. It's 3 points with 2 sidings and then 2 tracks coming off. The things that kind of adds complexity to this, which is what I'm working out today, is will there be supports underneath where the point motors need to be, and just here. So I hope by the end of today I can work out the exact location for the point motors in particular, and if I get enough progress done, put down some trackbed. So right here is what we have to work with point motors wise. I've salvaged these have been salvaged from our previous model railway, with the hope being that they should work. Now the issue, here we go. Okay, here's the point motor in detail. Now the issue that we have with these is you can see the throw pin right here has already been cut for an earlier model railway. So the fear is it could be too short for our baseboards. But if not, we should be able to recycle these point motors and not have to buy new ones, which will save both time, money, and the environment. Now in the perfect world we'd be able to just put these right underneath where we want our points to be and throw them. However, the issue that we have is, let's bring the camera down here. So the issue that we have with our point motors here is we've got all these supports, and obviously the point motors can't go through the support, so we need to find a location for the points to be where they won't be interfering with the supports underneath. If you look, you can actually see the points where the nails in the wood go through that support the trusses up. So we can make it a lot easier to position the points away from the supports because we can see where they are right there, which should hopefully make this process a whole bunch easier. Okay, so what we have here is these 2 points in the plan, which I'll put up right now. Maybe I won't, maybe I will. I should see. So in the plan we have here those 2 points butt up right next to each other, and then butt up right next to each other. Now the issue with that is we have one of the supports running right across here, and so therefore we couldn't get a point motor in. However, so I think the solution behind that, which is quite simple, is just to separate them a bit. That shouldn't be too tricky, and it gives us enough space to fit both point motors in. Now if this guy here, we have got when that's facing here, that is right on top of the line of supports, but we can then alleviate that by bringing him forward and round a bit more. And that way we can then bring our 2 tracks out that way, which should give us our solution we need. We've got this little Y that's meant to go right here, which will connect over there and to that point into that Y. So what I need to work out now is the position of this and where the relevant flexi track will go. And most importantly, how we will make sure we'll all have plenty of clearance underneath this. So here's what we have now. Just quickly laid the points down in their correct locations on this side here. So here we've got these 2 facing points here, which serve the job of connecting the main running line, which is this one here, to the line which goes just behind it there, that will bring it up around the ramp at the back, up onto the heritage line. And so that's what these 2 points right here are for, and it's where the line coming from the back depot right here and the loop from the line join. And so in theory you can run something all the way from the lower level depot all the way round up onto the ramp, up onto the higher level depot, without ever having to cross onto the main line, which should provide some interesting running opportunities. Now we've got after a bit of searching, I found the Y, which will go where you'd like to focus there. I found the Y point, which goes right in the middle, and this will obviously provide the second route. Now, with the main running direction being this way, we shouldn't get any accident it would be very unlikely to get accidental runoff that way. And so if something comes into the depot that way, it can then join into the correct running direction that way. I have also tested the clearance for the lines underneath the raised section, and it's perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out one line all the way through and around to the back there to put down the first piece of foam. So I just quickly marked out the first section where we're going to lay Trackbed. See, it's under that pencil line all the way through to that corner. And then from this corner, you're going to bring it out through here, through that point, and straight on. And once we've got that section done, we can then focus on bringing out the relevant other bits of foam. But this is going to be the core. This is going to be the core bit of foam that's going to run all the way through there. There we've got Trackbed, we've got glue, and we've got the line marked out. So let's put this first bit of track down, and so that's the entire roll of Trackbed here. So what this does is this goes underneath the double-O track or HO track, but same game. So this goes down underneath your track, and when your trains are running, it stops them from having a horrible noise, and it insulates them and gives them something to ride on. So you can see it's plenty big, and there's a seam down the middle, which you definitely can't see, which you cut and peel one side off to let you get a nice smooth curve, and then with the waste you put that back in. So now you're going to get a really sped up version of me putting this on our first section. I feel like I need a rubber band to kind of hold the bits I'm not using in place, but we'll see. Okay, so when you go around the curve, the external radius is obviously longer than the internal radius. And so to solve that Woodland Scenics Trackbed, if you'll focus please, it's got a split in the middle, and you tear it in two and lay one along there. So you can see I've now taken the space out for this strip, and I'm going to put it back in. You can actually see the difference between the two radii is about an inch right there. And so we're now just going to snip that right down, put some weights down there where the join is to make it nice. Then we've got a first strip all the way through. The foam has now dried on that little curve we've just done, all the way around there, and it gives a lovely surface for our stock to roll on. So the next part I'm going to do is that curve coming around there, and where they'll two meet in that point, the curve that also goes around to there. We need to work out the exact location for this point. We'd instinctually put it right in the middle here, but then the issue is as it travels out of that tunnel, the track would need to bend. So what I'm going to work out now is the exact position of that point and mark it down, which will then let us use some flexi track to mark that curve, and then I'll stick that down with the foam. So I'm using this bit of wood right here to work out our dimensions. So I'm going to get that centered at the tunnel portal right down there. About 3.5 inches, 9 centimeters. So we'll position it in the same way here. There we go. Now I'll get a pencil, which of course when you actually need it you can't find for the life of you. Pencil, woo, very blunt but should still do the job. There we go, we've got our little demarcation right there for the point to go on. Center our point right in. Now obviously we've got quite a bit of supports going on underneath here. So we need to work out a location where the point can throw. Because right here we've got a leg, so as a result there's much more wood going on than there would be over there. Okay, so right here we've got the points which will split off. And what we need to do is we need to make sure the curve that comes around here lines up with the track that's going to run parallel. So we've obviously got a join right here, so I need to make sure that this point will be clear of that, so I'm going to put that right about there. And the location of this point will obviously determine where the head on this one's going to be. So that will go right about there. We don't need much more there, because there'll be a location. I'll get my big stick of joy. So now I've got a flexi track and we're going to work out the exact alignment of this curve. Intentionally being really generous right here, because as it's a curve the track will be under tension, and what we want to avoid is the track bed itself coming loose. Over the end of where the point's going to be, but what we have is this whole section lifts out here, so where the track ends here and at the portal tunnel needs to be perfect, And so even though that's far too wasteful, once it's dry, we can cut it exactly in line with the main baseboards, so the bridge slots in perfectly. And again, as I said here, we want to avoid tension. We also really want to avoid tension in any of these strips, because what happens is they do stretch. And so if you stretch these when you're laying them down, they'll actually contract as they dry, meaning they won't be in the original position you had them in. So you even may want to even get a tiny bit of compression in them. So we've now got that curve going all the way around there, and the next stage will be to take the curve off under there and put that in underneath there. So the new curve has just been glued down in place, and you can see the track lined decently well with it. Obviously this is flexi track, so it will bend a bit when it's in place, and our points for the switch there are perfectly in line with just enough hang over there. And so obviously once I've got a bit of scrap foam, what I'm going to do is I can then fill in that little gap there. So what we now have to do, this curve that comes right around here. Now obviously this is going to be ever so slightly trickier, because rather than just putting an end on it like we have here, let me focus that. So rather than putting a clean end like we have here, I'll need to obviously taper it in place, and it's going under the tunnel. That's easy enough. Here's where this gets a bit more complicated. Obviously, there is going to be a tunnel over here, so we need to make sure the clearances underneath this are perfect. Because if the clearance isn't, because if we don't have enough clearance, we're going to have a big crash right as the models go underneath the tunnel. Got our little rail car. Obviously it's not really, just two BR coaches stuck together, which you can use to test the clearance. I'll just send one under. Yeah, so you can see there isn't much clearance right there, so I may want to make this curve a bit wider so it passes through right about there. One of the advantages of putting this foam down is right here we've got 4 joins going right together. We've got a piece of track, so it lets you kind of smooth out some of the inconsistencies and get an average elevation for the entire route. Now right along here, as this entire stretch of track is on a loop, rather than do what I do here where I keep the sections joined where they're running straight, I'm going to actually just rip the foam in half for the entire length of it. Here's a little tip if you're using this Woodland Scenics foam. If you try to rip straight away there, you may get a little tear on either side. But if you fold it like so, it'll actually rip right on the inside here, giving you a better cut. And now we've got a Y of track completed, which in America, where they don't have turntables, is how they would usually turn their trains. Okay, so that loop we put in is now dry, and we've got our Y going in there, and I've also cleaned up that join right here where we get into the liftable drawbridge. All I've got to do now on this section back here is put in the turnout going around there, as well as put the foam in for here. It's a bit messy at the moment, but that should all clean up when it's dry. So the section that I was just put down there is now dry, and we can just about fit 3 cars in there. So you can see with these 2 at the back, they can come through and just about pass without actually scraping there. So maybe when this is set, we should be able to get 3 cars in there. If not, it's not the end of the world. And we can just make this end bit of track there look a bit disused. So now I'm going to put in the final bit of track that's just going to come around there, off that point motor there. And with this final bit of foam, that should be just enough to fit right in there. We're going to have a nice smooth curve come off, and then straight there. So here's the thing, we can get 3 cars in here. However, the only way to do so would be to bring them up through the track, up onto this siding here. However, this can only hold 2 cars, meaning the longest connected vehicle we could get in around here would be 2 cars. So what I'm thinking is, if we wanted to perhaps have like a track maintenance vehicle stabled in the back here that wouldn't be used very often, and then get a DMU or something in there, or even just a set of track maintenance vehicles stored in here that could get the full length, or as the other bit there, kind of just put a buffer in here and have it be all disused back there.
made a slight cock up here where this is a bit too far out. So I've rectified that by just putting a bit of foam right there parallel to this. And as you can see, we can in fact get 3 cars in that area there. Obviously the tricky thing will be how do we get them in there, but we'll work that out when time comes. If you want to see my next update to this series, please subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, and if you have any feedback, please comment down below and like the video. Thank you very much. Goodbye.